So on today's Meetup, we have a Q&A on the very controversial topic of AI. First question, we'll probably start off with Richard and kind of work our way around, but just to bit of an intro to the audience, to who you are and how AI has impacted your role so far.
So, yeah, CEO of Adapter. How has it impacted my role? Well, actually, I'll give you a quick background. Been in the industry for a long time and a variety of different roles. I worked at Sun Microsystems for about 10 years, had my own startup, joined Adapter about 14 years ago. So, been around the traps. The obvious one is staying across AI is probably the important thing from my point of view because we're a software development company. So making sure I understand what it can do, what it's capable of, and what I guess it will do in the future. And because I'm a nerd, it means I've spent probably far too long looking at all these things. But I guess that's me.
My name is Mike Weaver. I'm a technical specialist at Insight Australia. I've been working in IT since the birth of the microcomputer. About 1979, I think, was my first time using a computer, which puts me at about 1 year old. Anyway, AI has been a bit of a tale of two cities for myself. On the one hand, it's been a massive impact in terms of learning and absorbing information. That's been really effective and really powerful. It's also enabled me to massively speed up my development workflows. But at the same time, most of the clients that I work for are horribly fearful of AI or hold it at arm's length and don't really want to engage strongly. So a lot of development work that I do is bereft of any AI to speak of. So, yeah.
Cool. So my name is Brian Foodie. I'm an independent consultant and I build my own startups. So the goal is to get out of consulting and into startups full time, but I'm scaling between them. I mostly use AI. I've played around with it from the consulting perspective, but I've kind of scaled it down a bit. I mostly just code and plan things out. I've found it actually, I lost clarity of thought sometimes. So I'm more interested in AI as an enabler of new products. So I've built a few new products. Bedtime Story was one that went viral where kids can create bedtime stories. We've released a few other ones. I'm really probably more interested in it from the whole host of new things you can do rather than as an automation thing right now.
Hey guys, Aaron Collier. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Velocio. So we're AI startup. So the co-founders actually, Marty and Jace, were at IBM previously and working in the AI space there, but they had their hands tied in terms of having to use the IBM stack and wanted to sort of branch out a little bit. So they've gone and set up their own consultancy. I joined them as their first, product person or first employee, and have been building products based off anything that we can from an AI sense. So we've been working in the recruitment space, working in R&D sort of documentation space, and working with investor relations, which is the product that we launched last year. So very similar. We're a consultancy, but trying to set up our own products that will hopefully turn into the next big thing, or at least pay the meals. In terms of what I use AI for, I started as a developer, but I haven't been writing code for a long time now. But now I can all of a sudden again, which has been helpful in terms of getting sort of proof of concepts and other bits and pieces up and going. But otherwise, there isn't an email that goes out or a text message that goes out or anything that hasn't gone through ChatGPT. So that has been my life and my spell check for the last sort of 18 months or so.
Awesome. Fantastic. So intro into everyone there. So I guess that can lead us into our first question. We've planned this to be a little bit controversial, but again, open to whoever wants to go first. When do we think AI will be good enough to take over software engineering?
To depends on your role, but as a junior developer, that's now. You can replace junior developers now. Yep. Full stop. Yeah, well, I mean, junior developers need to be supervised. They need to be mentored, just like a AI coding assistant. The reality is that a lot of the jobs for junior developers are probably going away or changing significantly. And I think the big challenge right now is the junior developers and the kids coming out of universities now don't have the skills and training to let them step into the roles that are required for a developer to use AI coding tools. So they're being taught the same technologies and same approaches that I was taught 20 years ago, whereas that's not the right approach to be teaching, and it's not the right technology to be teaching.
Yeah. So, I agree. Junior devs, the tools are at that level. When it will be for the rest of the industry kind of depends on where they're really at, and I guess we don't know. There are a lot of very intelligent people saying that within the next couple of years we'll have AGI, however you want to define that. So in which case, if that were happening, then we might see it accelerate pretty quickly and we won't be doing the same kind of software development that we have previously. If it's not as quick as that, then it's how long's a piece of string, I suppose. The point that we should all take on board is that it's as dumb as it's ever going to be, right? So it's going to be more intelligent moving forward. And so it's just a matter of time, really. So we should all be paying attention. Yeah, and everybody in the room, I'd imagine, probably already is. But you should be staying up to date with all of the tools and the technologies that help development from an AI point of view. I've never been a developer. I have done code in the past. Terrible code that would cause all sorts of problems, but enough to be dangerous. And yeah, I've used the tools recently to build some interesting things. So yeah, with enough knowledge, I think pretty much anybody could do coding now, but you probably have to be a little bit deeper in it. So the big one will probably be, you probably are very skilled developers, and so there's going to be some skills that aren't going to be replaced by AI in the short to medium term, depending on how long short and medium is. So you're probably safe, but it's definitely worthwhile staying across the tools.
Yeah, I just don't think it's there right now, and I don't think it will replace juniors for a long time, to be honest. Like an example is I came back after Christmas and I was like, I'm going to build an app. So I used a new tool called Lovable, which is supposed to be like it builds it out. And I used Devon, which is the software engineer. And within like a week, I had a pile of like it was, I couldn't understand the code. I tried to make a change.
Devon's terrible.
So it's like there's intelligence, but then there's like agency and there's responsibility. So like usually you're hiring someone to be like, have some agency, take some responsibility away from you. I don't think that's going to change. There's going to be 10 times the amount of software. So like, you still want someone to own it. See, I think like I would be hiring someone to take responsibility, even if they're just coordinating an AI or using it. I think there's going to be a lot more software. There's going to be a lot more need. I think your role will change. It won't be just taking a Jira ticket. But I mean, like how much of your job is coding? Like it's maybe 10%. Most of it is like, why isn't this deploying? Why is this a bug here? So yeah, it's a messy environment. Could create AI tooling around it, but that's a lot of work. Doing proper AI tooling is really expensive, and you need to be a really good software engineer to do the evals around it. So I think it's slightly overhyped, to be honest, in the short term. And everyone looks at the long term, but I just don't see how you get away from ultimately one human having responsibility.
I guess this is where it's going to be the controversial piece, because I agree. I think they are replaced already, only because I guess the latest little sort of blog post out last week is the whole vibe coding thing, which is where senior developers are using AI as their junior to a certain extent, or at least a person that they can bounce ideas off. And yes, it's not quite there right now. But I do think it's going to be a problem where you'll have a lot of senior people that may move to an AI space which doesn't leave much of an area for some of the juniors, and it does actually go back to the university and the training. And I think where they need to be is actually understanding how code works, or understanding how the frameworks work, or understanding the infrastructure, and understanding what Azure's doing, what AWS is doing, so then you can tell the AI what to do. But if you actually don't know any of those things, it's very hard to be able to give the commands, being able to give sort of the direction. And if anyone has coded with it, the biggest issue is bug fixing, because you have an error and you send it in and it still doesn't know how to fix it. But if you actually have half of an idea of why that error is there, it's very quick to be able to sort of jump to that. So I don't think it's going to replace programmers or coders per se, but I do think the next generation coming through, their level of understanding of how things work is going to be much more important than actually being able to write the code themselves.
Just on that point, we're essentially moving from being software developers or coders to being directors. We're directing the software and how it's built, and we're directing the actions it's taking. Your point about most of the work is on things like bug fixing or standing up infrastructure. Those problems are going to get solved and are being solved with AI tools as well. What we haven't really seen yet, but it's coming, and it is starting to roll out gradually. Things like R1, Claude 3.7 are examples of these, is giving specialised AI built to do specific tasks. R1 and Claude 3.7, I believe, both do use some element of mixture of experts. Not 100% certain about Claude 3.7, which is the latest model, which has only dropped last night, I believe, or the day before. If you haven't already used it, go and try it. It's amazing. It completely blew me away with whatever that had come before. Even R1, I think, is a significant step up. What we're going to be seeing is specific custom agents built for particular roles. We're going to see people, if you want to write a .NET software, you will use a agent that's specifically written and trained around .NET. If you want to write Python, you'll use an agent that's specifically written and trained on Python. Same with if you want to stand up AWS infrastructure and debug certain problems on AWS, you'll use an AI that is specifically trained on those problems. We're going to be getting that more and more. There's a lot of pressure to increase the speed and performance of these systems. They're very early days, and what we've just gone through is a bit of a bubble in terms of we want to get AIs to do everything, and I think we're starting to see very early days of the pulling back of that into specialised models so that they're custom for particular tasks, and maybe we'll have other AI that are trained in terms of allocating and handing out tasks and identifying what tasks to be done by what model. So maybe DeepSeek R12 will be a mixture of experts that will have all sorts of different AI trained in all these different models. So all these different techniques, and we'll just pick and choose the models we want. It's going to come down to speed and performance rather than ability to do everything.
Yeah, I would say if it's there, like what have you built and commercialized and leveraged to prove that? Like which one of you three have built a product, iterated with customers, generated revenue? Because if it was there, you should have 100 junior developers working for you. Like where's your product?
Yeah, but we said junior developers. Nobody's going to deliver a product with junior developers, right?
Well, you should have something in the market.
No, there's no chance in hell I would ship a product that's just been built by junior devs.
Wait, to get feedback.
No, I don't believe that.
An MVP?
Well, you know that our products are ones that we build for corporates anyway, so even we're not shipping things quickly to get feedback. MVP, sure, that's good for startups, but I don't subscribe to that typically, but certainly can't do it in a corporate world. But I have built a product that I use every day. It's pretty sophisticated, I think, but yeah, I'm not going around selling it. I've got other things I'm meant to be doing. I don't think not having a product that can go to market necessarily says that you can't have junior devs being used by AI. So,
I guess to me the proof is in money. Yeah, I just think it's all speculation until then.
I mean, also remember we're in Perth, so we've got a few years to catch up to the rest of the world. So.
Well, I think we underestimate like a human in flow state, how much they can do.
Well,
like
that's the other thing. But I don't think any of us said that a human wouldn't be in the loop. We just said that they're good junior devs. So no, there's no way that I would have any typical. Well, anything that an AI produces at this point, you would want to have a human in the loop. So.
But if I ask an AI agent to go off and like create this infrastructure in AWS, and it's gone off for an hour and done this, and now someone says there's a problem, like I've got to load all that back into my head. Like to actually make it, me as a senior developer, at some point I've got to step in and load all that into my brain. And that's why I hire a junior developer. Like I go, okay, build this, take responsibility for it. I don't want to have to step in and load that into my brain at some point. I want the junior developer to take responsibility for that.
You probably shouldn't hire any juniors to do any work for you then if you're going to let them go for it. No, honestly, that's just the way it is, right? I mean, yes, they will grow and they'll get better, but you will want a human in the loop, whether you've got a junior dev or you've got an AI in the mix. So, I mean, if you get a junior dev that can do all of that, then that's awesome.
But it's not doing all that. Like as a senior, I can carve up a system into like isolated things that people can own, and then I want them to own it. What I don't want is something that like breaks, and then all of a sudden I'm like, what the f*** is it done? I struggle with that part of it. Like I'm hiring someone for the responsibility. Yeah, and I'm not saying like AI can't do it, and it does accelerate things, but I think we underestimate the responsibility part. Personally. Again,
that's not what we're saying. The ultimate responsibility is the human in the loop. So.
But that's the junior dev that we're replacing.
No, it's the senior dev who's managing the junior dev.
But I'm saying I'm delegating responsibility to a junior.
But are you going to ship it before looking at it?
Yeah.
You're nuts.
No. What I'm saying is at some point it's going to break, and I don't want to have to keep jumping into these AI junior devs and loading in the work they've done. At some point they've got ownership.
I think you're overestimating humans now, but anyway.
No, not the ones I work with.
All right, well, we said that would be controversial for the first question, and I think...
We've got to make it a bit of fun.
We briefly all touched on it just then, but a couple of junior developers potentially in the audience, maybe a couple of managers that have junior developers at the moment.
Sorry, junior devs. We didn't mean to.
We love you.
So someone's looking to enter computer science or software engineering as an industry. What advice would you give them at this moment in time regarding AI? How would you tell them to go about it?
Go and work for this guy.
I think, like I was saying before, it's knowing the fundamentals. When I first became a developer, they taught me syntax and like how to write code, but I never actually fundamentally understood why you did a certain thing or how to make things efficient or how to do bits and pieces. And I think that's understanding why or how things actually work would be a good foundation. But also, while AI, and we're going to touch on, I guess, how it writes code for you, but equally it can answer questions for you, and it can actually be part of the process of teaching you how, or it can help you learn sort of what you're trying to do in that space as well. So I wouldn't just be using it as a tool for code. I'd be using it as a tool to teach you, a tool to be able to plan for you, a tool to how to break things down, Sometimes even if you're doing a uni assignment or it's your first project, you sort of just get bombarded with, I'm trying to make this massive thing, and you actually just need to know how to sort of break that down, and AI is great for that. It's like, I'm building this, how would you break this down? Or can you turn it into epics, or can you turn it into whatever it's going to be? So don't just use AI for coding, and I'm sure not that's what people are doing, but use it for everything that you're doing. Use it as an assistant. Use it as somebody you can bounce ideas off. That's what I'm using it for. Like I'm not a developer anymore, as I've said. So I'm using it to plan my day. I'm using it to tell me how to tackle this problem. Asking it, what have I missed? Like that's another good thing. Like I'm going to do this. So what have I missed? And then it will come back with suggestions. So I'd be using it more as a helpful sort of assistant in terms of giving me more information or helping me guide me through that process.
Yeah, I have to agree with you a little bit. As you were talking, first thing that popped into my head was it's really, for me, taking over doing all the busy work that I'm doing. A lot of the documentation it's doing for me, most of the coding that it is doing, and I look at what I'm doing and the way I'm doing it, I'm still involved in the loop in terms of the big ticket decisions and big ticket pieces of logic that need to be written, but it's doing a lot of the drudge work and a lot of the filler in terms of all the code that I'm writing, and certainly building out little proof of concepts, apps to prove ways of working or ideas for me is really useful and really powerful, that I can then go and turn into something else that I can take forward to a client or a potential business opportunity and talk with them about that. The idea of using AI as a learning tool, I think, is a revolutionary thing, and it is making life so much easier for students. The question, though, coming back to that, was what would we advise? Was it computer science students or someone coming into computing? I think the fundamental thing that needs to be reiterated is that technology is fundamentally a tool to do things, and actually doing the job of doing technology is fundamentally not all that fun. It's the other things that we're doing with it that are actually the fun things, the result of it. So to actually be good at this job, I think fundamentally requires a passion or a love of investigation and learning. And if you want to be good, doesn't matter what the technology is, how good it gets, as long as you've got that passion for learning, then you're going to be okay. So I would say to anyone that is starting out or is thinking about getting into technology, find that passion. And if you don't have a strong passion for that, explore it more and find something that does give you great passion and a lust for learning about that thing. And it doesn't have to be in every aspect of technology or the IT industry, but find that area that is for you, because that's the thing, that's where you're going to excel, and that's where you're going to thrive.
Yeah, I mean, just back about with the tools, I think, is probably one of the things I would say. It's changing quite a bit, so you could probably spend a day working on something and find that it was replaced tomorrow. But yeah, play with the tools a lot, and use it to do the learning. I mean, it is incredible like that you can ask it pretty much anything, and it should know the answer. Obviously,
it can make it up.
That's right, it'll make it up. Validate it afterwards. But yeah, that's what I would say.
That's why I think it's always going back to the why or how. Like, it could be wrong, so you need to actually be able to figure out if it's wrong. And that's going to be the big bit, and that's why I think having that fundamentals is there as well. But yeah, just quickly on if I was going through university right now and I had a project or whatever, I'd be trying to get as many different ideas done as quickly as I possibly can, because you're going to learn it. So like, this is my assignment, this is how it's going to get. I'll do it once, and then if you want to do that, go to the TAV, awesome. But if you want to actually learn from it all, it's like bang, 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 bang. You could have like 6 different like iterations of what that's going to be super quick, and you'd learn something slightly different every time. And then all of a sudden, it's just exposing yourself to a wider number of, I guess, things out there, and that's how you're going to learn. Like, if you want to just get past, you can do the one. That's probably what I would have done. But if you want to actually learn it all, I think this opportunity is to actually get so many different iterations done in the same amount of time that you would have had to have done if you were trying to do it all yourself.
Yeah, I guess, like even I suppose looking at myself, I do consulting and I do like trying to do startup. I think if you're a uni student, you're probably like going to see the world through an AI lens now. So you're probably going to see a different way of doing things than people who are in the industry. So you're probably in a really good position to create new products. So if you have a bit of like, if you have a bit of entrepreneurship, there's probably a great time to be building your own stuff. So you can like really leverage the AI tools to try and create something new. I'd say if you're coming in, like for a specific example, if I hired you as a junior or as a workplace, like don't take my task and put it into AI and then just send it back to me, because that's how you will get replaced by AI. I'd say like if I give you a task or someone gives you a task, like you said, use the AI tooling to like go, how is this repo structured? Try and understand it, and then like give the task back and explain like why you've done it. And then like I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to use this guy over an AI because he's obviously trying to understand things, he's taking responsibility for it. Yeah, and specifically Cursor, if you're using Cursor, just turn off the autocomplete, because I think that's a surefire way to rot your brain. Like if you're doing like, you're typing and then it autocompletes and you go, I'll accept it. Like your brain is dead. Like use Cursor, there's a Command K one, which is like, I'm going to ask it to do something. Like that actually preserves your neural networks. If you're doing like autocomplete, your neural networks are just collapsing. So yeah, switch in Cursor, Command K over autocomplete. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks for that. A bit more of a product-focused question. How do you think it's transforming the way we deliver software? Do you see it speeding things up, or is there a different way that it's helping us deliver software?
I think the way that we're developing software will fundamentally stay the same. There's been a lot of discussion from fairly influential people saying that we're going to do things like replace all software with agents, and I think that's short-sighted, and I don't think that really is a particularly productive use of compute, because I think agents are fundamentally quite wasteful. When you look at things like, GPT-4 took 4 gigawatts of electricity to train, and to operate, R1, the DeepSeek R1 takes 22 H100s and 2.5 terabytes of RAM. That's just, that's a terrible use of resources to run Excel spreadsheet or a game or whatever. So I don't think we're going to get fundamental changes in the way software is run or is built. Fundamentally, the code output, but we are going to see big changes in the way it's built in terms of the way we as software developers work.
Yeah, I think there's still a human element to it, and it goes through that whole, creative side as well. There's still, you need problem solvers, you need people to come up with the idea to start with, you need to understand how to get something out to the market and get the feedback. AI is not necessarily going to get you it'll give you suggestions, but it's not going to necessarily get you to the fastest endpoint for that. So from a product point of view, yeah, you're still going to need designers, you're going to need UX people, you need to have the people that are coming up with the ideas, you need the customers, you need everything else. So it's not going to replace, I don't think, all of that. I think the process of being able to get to the plan or the idea or the final concept will be much faster if you're using it. But I do, right now, things will change, obviously, over the years. It's the code or the technology, I think, is where some of the bigger advancements have been thus far. But That's just because it's been developers developing it and they're wanting the most help potentially.
There will possibly be a shift or a split in software, in that there will be code or products that are professionally built, and there will be products that are built by people that have no software development experience and no formal training, and that they will be pushing out product that is built by AI and designed by AI, and all of those jobs that you just mentioned are being substituted by AI, and they will probably fill a niche in the market. And so I think there will probably start to be changes on that front. But yeah, fundamentally, I think most quality software that people look to and go, I really like that, is for a while anyway still going to be done by humans as an overseer over the top of AI.
I'd argue that already exists. Like you got people that develop good products and you got people that develop products. That's already happening right now. And it may just be budgets, it may be the people doing it, it may be for a number of different things. I think there'll be more of it because the ability to pump these things out are going to be much easier. But yeah, I think there's already a massive gap between something that's quite good and usable and quick and does the job that you actually want it to do versus a lot of the crap that you're ripping your hair out and just frustrated all the time. So I think you'll just have more of the
I think like the development piece, is obviously only a component of building a product. And so like we're talking about with development using and leveraging AI as a tool, I think it can be leveraged in a whole bunch of different ways. And so, yeah, the tooling is going to change and the way that we work with it. It'll all depend on, how rapidly they are actually building the AI tools, but I can see, with today's technology, we can absolutely leverage it in a bunch of different ways. Maybe one way is prototyping a lot more and a lot earlier, and not having to worry about, some of the other parts until you've prototyped something that people actually like, and then you can start to build out the product to a greater extent beyond that. So
yeah, I think we'll see a lot more like the product you built yourself, like that wouldn't have existed a year ago. So I think we'll see a lot more products getting to market by people who have the domain expertise, and maybe developers coming in a little later in the workflow when you start to hit that decay with the AI isn't really handling it anymore. But yeah, it's pretty exciting that like people like Richard now can just release products with the domain expertise, and you don't have devs gatekeeping it, you don't have them throwing up problems, but then they'll come in later to like take ownership of them.
Richard, we'll start off with yourself for this next one. Given that we are a mobile app company, in the world of mobile apps, how do you see this technology impacting the space?
Yeah, so I'll talk about it, I guess, more from rather because we've talked a lot about the development process, and that's just generic anyway. But so I was actually saying today that what I find interesting about a lot of people that talk about AI is that they don't really talk about mobile and AI, and I kind of feel like that's where we're all going to be using the technology, right? It's going to be on a mobile device because that's what we've all moved to. There's going to be no point in moving back to a desktop for certain things. So I kind of feel like, the interface to AI will be through the phone. My guess is that we will see smaller AI will probably bulk up the mobile devices as well. So there's some meeting in the middle of some of the work being done on the mobile device and then offloading it to a back-end AI if it needs to be more complicated. It's obviously security and privacy things that'll flow into that, so some people are going to prefer it. I noticed the way that Apple have obviously started doing it, and everybody, probably rightly so, is saying they're behind, but you can tell that their angle on it is to do some of that on the device and then integrate different apps with that AI via app intents. And I think that's kind of a clever way to do it. So if you've got an app, what you want to do is expose the features or functions that you've got to the AI that's on the device, potentially leveraging some of the AI that's in the cloud. And I think that's short to medium term. That's kind of what I would imagine.
Brian, since you've got the mic, one use of AI that has completely blown you away. Any wow moments and an example would be great.
Yeah, I think the most recent one was the Gemini multimodal. You basically call Google Gemini as a Google Meet and share your screen, and it can talk through what's on your screen. So it's like, I think the example was they had some software, some obscure software that was like a workflow thing, and they called Google Gemini and a Google Meet, shared their screen, and it explained what was wrong on their screen, which I thought was pretty insane. I think it's probably the most futuristic thing I've seen, where you can basically summon this intelligence into your computer to like chat about it. Because you're often like, you're in Cursor and it's like, okay, I can do it there, but often you're on some website and you want AI help. So being able to bring it in, share your screen and chat through it, I thought that was pretty cool.
I think for me, and it's going to be outside the realm of most people and what they're developing, but it's all in the medical space, it's all in the health space. Like the fact that they can now detect cancers like 2-3 years before what specialists were able to do. Like, I'm never going to make an app that's going to be able to beat that. Like, that's the mind-blowing thing. But yeah, very similar. I think in terms of just, cool, that was cool. I think there was a weird one out the other day of just the two AI engines just talking to each other. And I was like, yeah, these guys, like, you can. I mean, I hate talking to people. If I can get all my phone calls done, if I could get my call centers replaced, if I can get all of that, I can just imagine that being a real world, I guess, use case scenario that doesn't feel like it's actually that far away. It was always the robotic voice that always put people off, but now that it's coming real, I think that's going to be a big game changer coming up pretty soon.
I think the biggest wow moment for me was when I was able to have a when I had ChatGPT, was able to read and tell me in average person language what my doctor had written on a referral note. A, it could read his writing, and B, it could actually tell me what all those big words meant.
Yeah, it's hard to sort of think about ones that have really impressed me recently, so I'll go with the generic one that I'm assuming most people have also seen or played with. But Notebook LM, where you can give it a whole bunch of interesting, documents or references, and then it'll make a podcast that discusses the topic. So going back to sort of, I guess, leveraging AI to learn stuff, that's pretty cool in that you can, there was, I think it was a AMA, there was one with the OpenAI team, and I exported the Reddit thing because I couldn't be bothered reading it, and got it to just look at the answers, and then I gave that document to Notebook LM and said, could you just do this as like a 20-minute podcast for me, and I listened to it in the car. So
that leads us into kind of the next question, really. So pretty open, but do we think AI in general is overhyped? Do we think it's in a bubble? And also this can lead into the next question is, how do we think people outside of technology are adapting to it? Either people of more of a mature age, people not in tech as majority of us are. But yeah, I'd love to know thoughts.
I do think it's overhyped, but the fact that there's still people out there, and I ask if they've ever used ChatGPT, and there's still no's out there, I think is amazing. And I think Richard was saying before, like there's people that don't even know you can upload a spreadsheet to it, or you can upload an image to it, or like they have not even scratched the surface. So I'm sick of hearing about it in terms of being overhyped, but the fact that there's still so many people out there that aren't using it on a regular basis obviously just means that I guess the message isn't necessarily getting through, but maybe I'm just the target audience, so I'm hearing it a lot more than others. Is it a bubble? No, I think it's going to be around. Like it's not going to burst and disappear. I think it'll become the norm, and it will just everyone will be doing it, and everyone will be sort of using it in their day-to-day lives. So, if depending on your definition of bursting the bubble, but no, I think it's here to stay. But I'm always surprised with my friends and family of how little they use it based on how much I'm using it. So, take that as you will.
I'd probably say it's about the right amount of hype overall. Like I think I get a bit annoyed sometimes, obviously, as a developer, where it's like people underestimate the devil in the detail part, but like it is going to reinvent every industry fundamentally. So I think on the minor scale of developers, it's probably a bit overhyped, but overall, I think it's about the right amount of hype on a societal level.
Yeah, I think there was a research paper from Anthropic. Not sure whether it was released at the end of last year or the beginning of this year. And it found, I think I'm getting this right, that the daily activity of the workforce that used large language models or AI was around about 4%. And that's in America, I believe. So there's a huge, everyone that's talking about AI and all the people here exist in a massive bubble of thinking about and hyping up AI. Majority of the population don't know about it or don't use it on a regular basis and don't really understand how it's going to impact their lives. Probably, I think the stats were something like 30% in October last year had used it. It's probably gone up to probably 60 or 80% by now, at least tried it out, or heard about it and seen it, but most people haven't used it. And I think it's not a bubble. I think it's actually being underhyped. I think it's a massive thing that we're going to have to get our head around. And the sooner everyone does get thinking about it and talking about it on a realistic sense, the better. There's a massive question that we have to answer before we get too much further along, which is AI going to impact our lives, or how AI is going to impact our lives, but how do we want AI to impact our lives?
I find the question about bubbles an interesting one, because I've heard a lot of people talk about that recently, but I don't think AI is the bubble. The spending on AI might be the bubble, I'm not sure. But AI isn't. I think, I saw when just before the internet, just before the web kind of got launched, really, so about when Mosaic came out, I was pretty amazed at that. And I think when I saw ChatGPT for the first time, that eclipsed what I thought the web was. So I think it is massive, it is fundamental. Again, coming back to, whether or not these experts are right about the scaling laws, they seem to firmly believe that it's only a matter of a few years. If that's true, then absolutely it's probably bigger than the hype. But we're yet to see. I guess, we haven't seen a heap of evidence, say, in the last year that it's as big. But again, even so, where it is today is still significant enough that I think that we haven't capitalised on it anywhere near like we can. And I always talk about the Commodore 64, which people probably get annoyed with, but I had a Commodore 64 when I was a kid, and when it first came out, there were these really horrible games that were all blocky and stuff, and then I kind of feel like it was around for a long time, but maybe that was just because I was a kid, but it seemed to be around for a long time, and they kept evolving the games to the point where there was this big fat border around the screen of the Commodore 64. And at one point, somebody figured out how you could have sprites in the edges of the screen, and so then you could take up more of the screen. And I think even if we just stopped where AI is now, we're going to work out ways of putting sprites in the borders and, making it even better than it is just based on the place it's at now. So I think it has fundamentally changed, and it'll continue to fundamentally change even if we just sort of stop now, which by the sounds of it, it's not going to. So,
last one for me. What is your, again, generic AI prediction for this year, and any shouts on where we will be in 5 years?
For this year, yeah, that's a really good question. I had some ideas until about 2 weeks ago, and then they were all shot out of the sky. So, yeah, I'm really quite bullish on the next set of models and the next sort of set of technologies that they're developing. And I think we're going to see more AIs coming out that are specialist AIs, and they're going to be getting into more and more small devices such as mobile phones and other things that are not technology devices. We're going to start seeing AI and large language models and Gen AI uses pop up in. So in terms of 5 years, I have no idea. It's the sky's the limit at this stage. Every prediction I've had in the past year has been blown through. So.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't look at the questions beforehand, so I'm trying to think on that one. But I think I'm more excited of like the products that come along that reinvent things completely from the ground up. So I think this year we've seen a lot of new builders come in, so I think we'll see like products which are fundamentally different from anything we've seen before, rather than like just using AI to change things. It'll be a complete reinvent, so I'm excited on that front, more from a product perspective.
Yeah, very similar to I think 5 years is ridiculous because I can't even guess the next 5 months. We've been building a product now for 12 months, and just in the changes that have happened in the last 12 months, we've had to fundamentally change the way that we've done things for efficiency gains, to be able to take advantage of the reasoning, to be able to take advantage of sort of the way that it processes now. So yeah, whatever we said that was going to happen in 5 years is going to be wrong. But yeah, I think it's more of a case of it'll keep changing, and yeah, you just need to keep trying things because it'll keep going. If you think you're going to build a product today and it's going to use the exact same AI that you're using right now in the next 12 months, like you're joking, you're killing yourself.
In the next year, Elon Musk is going to get caught changing his AI again for some unknown reason. And in the next 5, he's going to get caught a lot more times changing it. Yeah, I mean, it's, to echo, 5 years, who knows? But I don't know. This is complete gut feel, so it's, not based on anything other than me being mildly optimistic, which is weird. If you ask anyone I work with, that's unusual. Or maybe it's not optimistic at all, because I think it's actually going to change a lot in 5 years. I think just based on some of the very intelligent people that are talking about AI, I think we're going to see a lot of industries change.
I would just add one other thing that I think probably the biggest change we're going to see is an economic refactoring of our society. That is going to be happening at some point. And I'm not really sure which way it's going to go. Hopefully it's going to be for the betterment of all mankind, but who knows? As I alluded to before, I think fundamentally we need to start thinking about the question and asking the question, what do we actually want our society to look like? How do we actually want AI to work for us? What do we want it to be doing? Do we want it to be doing all of our creative, enjoyable jobs for us? Or do we want it to be folding our socks?
One thing I think we'll see is this idea of being able to cultivate your own personal AI. I want to be able, Terminator 2, where John Connor teaches the Terminator how to joke and stuff. I think that's where a lot of younger people, and even for me, I want to tell the AI something and it grows. Right now it's quite boring. I don't know, if you use it, it's functional, but I want to see some more personality. Even the products, if you look at Devin, the software engineer, it's just a really boring software engineer. Or I want to be able to create my own software engineer that I don't know, can swear. I don't know, whatever I want to do with it. But yeah, I think the next year on the consumer side, I'd like to see a lot more character, persistent characters that you can build and bring into different products. Yeah.
Have you seen putting in Curse's rules? Some people have put in, that they want it to swear a lot and stuff, and it actually does. Yeah, so try that.
Yeah, I want that, but I want to be able to bring it to different things. My little AI that just. That's cool.
All right, so we'll hand the mic to you guys here. I'll be roaming around. Any questions, anyone?
Thank you very much. I'm an educator. I teach Python Python coding to children, basically 8 to 12 teenagers. Should I continue teaching Python? Is it still worth it? And in case if you have any other thoughts about how should I design my curriculum so that I'm adding more value to them in terms of AI?
That's a really good question, how you should be structuring your curriculum. I'm not sure I've got an answer for that, but I do know the single most important thing that you can probably be teaching your kids is system thinking. It's like that's the fundamental thing behind all software development, and I'm sure you already know that. That's going to continue to be hugely important. I think introducing kids to AI is a really valuable skill, and as a Python teacher, maybe you can start introducing them into teaching them how to build their own language models, how to train them, and how to build new and interesting systems. Building lots of small language models and systems that are customized to specific small tasks and small roles is one of the most useful ways we can get functionality out of these systems. So giving kids the ability to go and build their own systems and seeing what they create with them, because this is going to be the next generation. Essentially, this is going to be the AI generation, right? So they're going to be the first post-AI generation that's going to have grown up with AI and large language models, and they're going to see, as I think was mentioned earlier, the world in a wholly different way. So, yeah, keep teaching them Python, keep teaching them AI systems. Yeah. Congratulations, by the way.
I won't answer maybe the second part because I think it's done a great job. Yes, definitely keep teaching them, because in a few years' time you'll be replaced by robots. So, my wife's a teacher, so I think we still need that. The people, especially teaching people. And especially at the moment, because you're not going to get the enthusiasm or the passion or the love or anything like that from the AI at this point. So, yeah, it's great. Thank you for doing that.
Mike, you mentioned that 4% of people are using generative AI at the moment. What do you think about the 96% of people who are going to be onboarding all the government agencies, all of the various organisations? How are they going to deal with hallucinations, and how do you think they should be told about the risks?
I guess the same way that we deal with people driving cars, we teach them about the risks, we teach them what to look out for, how to handle them properly. With language models that maybe we can train ourselves, AI we can train ourselves, AI maybe we can breed and change and evolve over time. We're going to need rules around that. We're going to need to have systems in place to protect not only the individual but also the community at large. We're going to need to, and I think this can't come soon enough, we're going to need rules in place to dictate how we're allowed to use AI. So are we allowed to let AI replace all of our workers if I own a factory? Am I allowed to go and buy robots to replace all of my workers and fire them all? Am I allowed to use AI to draw all of my art? Is an AI going to be respected if it reaches AGI? Is an AI going to be respected as a individual with the same rights and privileges that a human would? Does a AI, get the right to vote if it's achieved AGI? What does that society look like? These are all science fiction concepts and seem really crazy and out there, but they're decisions and they're things that we really should be thinking about discussing openly now, because it's coming. Maybe not now, maybe not this year, but as was said earlier, AIs are the stupidest, are the worst and most stupid that they're ever going to be.
Probably one thing I'd say, like if you're coming into LLMs for the first time, like I often think of like Git, you know, the main branch and you branch off. Like I think the human is the main branch, and you want to have that mindset that like you're going out to the LLM to like delegate a task, and then you want to bring it back into main branch. Like I always have like a diagram that I update, and I try and like keep a conceptual model of what I'm building.
That is
like,
the most developer-centric answer I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's my brain. But yeah, don't keep like going off on the LLM and not coming back and building up your own conceptual model, because you'll just get dragged all over the place, and you'll end up not knowing like what's been done. So there's my nerdy take.
I think to bring it to a more practical level of now, it's all to do with context. So if you're going to go out to the wide LLM or the internet, it's going to come back with hallucinations. But as developers, you have the option to be able to provide the AI the context that it needs. So if it needs to be a specialist in a very particular subject, you just give it that data. And so the ability for it to come back with more accurate information or to skew away from those hallucinations, you need to be very particular about the context that you're giving it. And so that 96% won't necessarily understand that, but as people that are developing apps or doing services for government agencies or corporates, you need to understand that, because you can't just go out and ask ChatGPT for the answer and come back and spit it out, because it's going to use all of its data that it has available. But if you need it to be very particular and very concise on what it's actually using, that's up to us as the developers to be able to make sure it's got the right context.
Hi. I would be curious to know your opinion. So far in Australia, we do not have a law on AI regulation like in Europe, in the US. Are you excited that we will get one, and what do you think is the advantage?
No, I'm not excited about getting new laws, but that's just my own personal opinion. I think for us, the biggest problem that we've had is the data going outside of Australia. That's been our biggest blocker in terms of dealing with particular clients. So you've had to sort of skirt around either getting through that or making sure that your data's staying within Australia, which then limits sort of what you're able to use. So they're the problems that we're having, and then potentially having the law come in place will give us more clarity on what that's going to be. But no, it's hard to know until they've actually drafted that up of what it's going to actually mean for the industry.
Yeah, I think it would probably get me leaving Australia if it was too much regulation, because you're literally going to fall that far behind. Yeah, it would probably be a reason to leave the country if it got too regulated.
I guess I'm preempting or reading into why you're asking, because I'm assuming you're not asking, I guess the angle these guys have come from a restriction point of view, but more potentially from a protection point of view. So anyway, I'll take that sort of stance, and then I'll be really cynical about Australian government. We'll just follow what the US does, maybe Europe. And I think that's a bit of a shame. I think that we should be taking the front foot, and because it is what'll happen is we'll take so long to actually put anything in place that we'll end up scrambling to catch up. So, but I think that's just generally Australia and technology, etc.
As someone that's developing large language models, or small language models rather, I don't want regulation. As a parent to sort of 3 small children, I am fearful of what the future holds with unfettered evolution of AI. I'm also a bit hopeful, but there's a great trepidation in my mind around that. And it's not that I necessarily think that we need lots of regulation, but I think we need a societal understanding of how we treat and deal with this technology. So I guess that didn't really answer your question, but it's about as close as I'm going to get to it. The technology is amazing, and we need to keep developing it, as has been mentioned. We don't really want to fall behind, and I think Australia could be a shining light in that front. We haven't really been that way so far, but we seem to have all the right raw materials in terms of smarts and opportunity and sun to power all of this thing. But yeah, we do need to start putting in place some frameworks around that, as much as I dislike it.
Earlier on, we talked about the sort of proliferation of software at the hands of people who have gotten access to AI. For some of the younger developers and engineers in the room, are there in particular any tools that any of you use to build and leverage AI without building software and actually learning from what you're doing versus just using repo prompt to throw everything into a single prompt and seeing what you get?
Yeah, I think it's tools that try to take over the whole workflow, like Lovable, Bolt, things like that. They've got a really they look really good up front, and then it decays very quickly because they've got complete ownership of it. And I think it's I know it's a real developer model, but if you consider the main branch, you want to still stay in flow state, and you want to have build up your conceptual model as you go. So I think that's why the likes of Cursor are kind of the role model for what you should be doing. It's tight human in the loop. You can delegate. I don't need to write a function that knows how to square or cube something, but I need to understand how things are building out. So yeah, something with tight feedback loops like Cursor, and then turn off the autocomplete, because that's just it's just too lazy. So in Cursor you can do Command L, and you can ask it questions about it. And yeah, I would say I always I use a Miro board as well. So I'm constantly have a Miro board alongside it, and that's spatially it works for me. But yeah, first off, go into ChatGPT, have a little chat around it, think around what you're doing if you want to have someone to bounce ideas, and then get into Cursor and keep the feedback loop tight. Yeah.
I use primarily, in fact, I use exclusively Visual Studio Code with either Klein or Rucline, and very much on the bandwagon of the vibe coding. I give my assistant fairly large tasks to go and do, and then I review its response or its proposal, and I get it to propose architecture and designs first, and I talk through that with them, and I build the conceptual model out, and then go and get my assistant to go and implement that, and then I iterate on that. The two critical elements that I find are context window is king. If your context window gets too full or gets completely maxed out, in worst case scenario, then your assistant just starts to forget things, and it will start to get confused if it does get too complicated. So I try to keep that context window fairly clean and fairly consistent. So I don't have an issue starting up a new session, a new task, and I will get it to update and document things on a regular occasion. And I find it helps me to understand what it's doing, and also helps me to understand what it's writing. If you start getting into using other models rather than ChatGPT or Claude, you can start using some of the faster models, and they will code really fast, and so you lose track of where it's going or what it's doing. So you need to be able to pause and think things through. The other thing to bear in mind is with the advent of the MCP, the Model Communication Protocol, I believe it's called, from Anthropic, and being able to use tools, being able to do things like hook in Git commits and get your assistant to write Git commits. You don't need MCP to do that, but it's really, really useful for that. Mural boards as well, getting your assistant to actually update and write stuff on mural boards. You can get it to architect something out, design something, stick it up on a mural board. You can get it to, I haven't actually done that, to be honest, but I will try that when I get home. I get it to write up lots of mermaid diagrams and a picture tells 1,000 words. So get that information out there and enable me to understand what it's thinking about and discuss it. And sometimes I'll actually use a couple of different models to discuss things and talk about things, whether it be DeepSeek R1, whether it be Claude, whether it be O3 or something like that. That can be really useful to get different perspectives from the assistant. And only then start going in and encoding. And sometimes I'll stop it halfway through and say, no, that's the wrong idea, or I've changed my mind, I need to go back and redo it. And those tools such as Klein and Rucline have a whole bunch of tools that are progressing really fast. And unfortunately for tools like GitHub Copilot, they seem to be iterating a lot slower than Klein and Rucline, and I think they're probably the fastest on the market that I've seen in terms of the speed of iteration and new features and things like that. There is a great model, if you can have a play with it, is the GitHub Workspace, which is essentially a planning model. It has a 3-phase design. It brainstorms the task, then designs or plans out the task, and then it goes and executes it. And that's essentially the ideal steps that you want to be doing with your assistant. The only unfortunate thing with that particular tool is that it hasn't been able to keep up with the newer models that are got deeper thought and understanding. So
I guess one thing I'd say is, like, we already have like examples of humans being 100 times more productive than other humans, and it's startups, right? Like, startups are probably 100 times more effective than organizations. I think what you don't want to do is like use AI to create your own organization. Like, you don't want to have loads of mini developers. You want to just like become a gun yourself. So like, I already know, like, there's a startup, my friend has a startup, he has one engineer who's doing loads of work. He uses just a minimal amount of AI. So like, I wouldn't underestimate how much like one person really focused on a task can do. So like, don't use AI to create an organization, because we know one person or two people really focused like is really productive.
Yeah, come and sit down with me and watch how I use Cursor, and then don't do any of that. And you'll be sweet.
Alrighty, guys. Well, that's 7 o'clock on the dot. So, if everyone could just please put their hands together for a panel this evening.